Hi there. I'm Cindy Linden, and this is the Cook Along podcast. I find myself in a pickle, and it's a pickle I've been in for a while, but I keep forgetting that I'm in this pickle. I have a recipe that I saved some time ago. Actually, I'm looking, and it was almost 6 months ago now, from Half Baked Harvest, called Pumpkin Butter Chocolate Chip Cookies. And the picture looks really good, and I like chocolate chip cookies, and I like pumpkin. So I keep thinking, oh, pumpkin chocolate chip cookies, this is a new recipe. This would be fun to try. What I don't do is read the word butter. I somehow just skip right over that word. But it's called Pumpkin Butter Chocolate Chip Cookies because it's not about pumpkin, it's about pumpkin butter in the recipe. In other words, it's like apple butter, which is a kind of jam only made with pumpkins. So I have picked this up and set it back down so many times because I keep thinking, oh, I'll go to Trader Joe's or someplace and I'll get some pumpkin butter. And, maybe you can find that, but particularly at Trader Joe's, not now. It happens to be spring. Pumpkin to them is a seasonal item. So they carry it only in the fall. And I might be able to find some somewhere else, but I just don't want to do that search. So what I've done is I have two recipes in front of me now. I have the pumpkin butter chocolate chip cookies, and I have a recipe that I pulled from All Recipes called Best Slow Cooker Pumpkin Butter. I chose the slow cooker. It wasn't my favorite thing because that means it'll take a while. But I chose it because every other recipe I looked at seemed to require apple cider or apple juice, and I don't have any in the house. And I do not feel like going to the store. Otherwise, I'd just be going to see if I could find pumpkin butter, right? So this is a recipe for slow cooker pumpkin butter. And just know, if you're looking forward to the cookie recipe, that it will come shortly hereafter once I have the pumpkin butter made, but that the pumpkin butter itself, if we're lucky and it turns out to be a good recipe, will also be good on toast or peanut butter sandwiches or who knows what. Maybe dolloped into other recipes that we might decide to try later. Cheesecake or something. Anyway, we have to start with the pumpkin butter. I'm going to give you the ingredients for the amount I'm going to make. I'm going to make a half a batch because the cookie recipe is my main goal here. And I am not looking to set up a bunch of pumpkin butter in jars. If you decide you would like to do that, I recommend that you go to the All Recipes website and type in Best Slow Cooker Pumpkin Butter. Actually, they have several pumpkin butter recipes there you can decide between. And look at the regular full amounts because I'm making a half batch today. Here's the ingredient list if you want to join me in this adventure. Nonstick cooking spray. 14 to 15 ounce can of pumpkin puree. That's not pumpkin pie filling. It's just plain old pumpkin puree. And that's your smaller can. And I have some that I made from scratch, from actual squash, pumpkins in my freezer. Because I do those in the fall and then divide them into 1 pound bags and freeze them. So that's what I'm going to use. You need a 3/4 cup of brown sugar, 3/4 of a cup of white sugar, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/4 of a teaspoon ground nutmeg, a 1/2 teaspoon ground ginger, 1/8 of a teaspoon ground cloves, 1/4 of a teaspoon vanilla extract, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And you can add more or less sugar depending on how sweet you want it. I know that one person who made this felt it was too sweet for them. The equipment that you'll need are the slow cooker, of course, and you can use a small one if you're not making a ton of this, which is what I'm doing, and a bowl to mix everything up in, although you know what, I think I'm just going to mix mine in the bowl of the slow cooker, because I don't know why I wouldn't do that. So let's get this show on the road, since the final act, which is the cookies, is kind of a long way off. The sooner we get started, the sooner we get to the part that's really most interesting to me. So I am presently dumping my partly frozen pumpkin into the bowl of my smaller slow cooker. I think it's 2 quarts or something. I have a 4-quart one, but I just can't see that that's going to be necessary. Now, when I make apple butter, yes, indeedy, I do that in the big one. And you can find that recipe on my website, thecookalongpodcast.com, slow cooker apple butter. Oh my goodness, it's good. And it's so easy. And it just comes to be while you wait for it. And this may do the same. I don't expect it to have the same appeal for me that the apple butter does. But I'm not sure I've ever had pumpkin butter. I guess I feel a little guilty about the fact that here I am making something new, not because I want to taste it or try it, but because I need it for a different recipe that I want to taste and try. But, it doesn't matter. Here I am making something new. Now, really, all we're doing is adding the rest of the ingredients and then stirring it up. So, as I mentioned, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. And that's almost always going to be packed. It's just the way it measures. I guess because otherwise there's too much air. It's not the same as white sugar, which gravity helps fill the cup. So anyway, 3/4 of a cup of that. 3/4 of a cup of white sugar. I saw some recipes that use maple syrup instead. I kind of like that idea. And if I wasn't in such a darn hurry to get my pumpkin butter to make these cookies, I don't think this is the recipe I would have chosen. I probably would have chosen one that has both the apple cider and the maple syrup in it, because that seems like fun to me. All right, 3/4 of a cup of the white sugar now. But hopefully this will be okay. I mean, it's got all the right spices and stuff in it. Teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm using some good Penzeys blend cinnamon. 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and I'll tell you, this is less than the recipe asks for, but I find that I don't really want a ton of nutmeg in my pumpkin pie. I like a tiny bit, but I prefer the other spices in there better, so I cut the nutmeg amount in half, and I think it'll be okay, so you can just trust me, okay? Then we need 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger and 1/8 teaspoon of cloves. And this is another spice that I think should be in a pumpkin pie. And in fact, many things that are like fall oriented should have cloves in them. But I had to relearn to like them because when I was about 15, in preparation for getting braces on my teeth, I had all my wisdom teeth extracted because they said they would be pushing my teeth back out of line if I didn't get rid of them before I had braces. And when they finished extracting the teeth, all 4 of them, not at once, it was 2 different visits, they packed them with cloves, a gauze pad that had been soaked in clove oil, which may have eased the pain. But not only was I in severe pain, but I also had an unpleasant reaction to the painkillers that they gave me. And so for me, cloves have been associated for much of my life, most of my life, with being sick and in pain. So it took me a while, took decades to get back to where I can actually deal with the smell of cloves. At this point, I should tell you that the recipe actually calls for 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves for this half-size recipe. But for all the reasons I just told you, I'm only using 1/8. But I do think that this recipe is going to need it. And now I put them in things. I just put them in things. I just don't take a deep breath while I'm doing it. But you know thyself, right? Okay, the next thing is some vanilla extract. Oh, goodness. Oh, my goodness. My vanilla. Oh, it's cracked. The bottle is cracked. Dang. I was going to say it's leaked and there's sticky goop everywhere, but the bottle itself somehow is badly cracked. I can see that now. Not like it's shattered or anything. It's just got this crack that runs probably, I'll bet you, all the way down the side. And that's why I have this goop. Okay, well, I am going to go away for a few minutes because I am going to have to now transfer my vanilla and clean up the spot on my shelf where it was stuck. So, yeah, I'll be back in a bit. I suppose this must have seemed like a lot of fuss over a little vanilla. But have you bought vanilla lately? It's so expensive. And this was a large bottle. It was like 8 ounces. And somehow, maybe something had bumped into it and was cracked down the side. So I have moved it into smaller bottles because I only had little ones. Anyway, I have rescued the vanilla, and now we're going to proceed. So, where were we? We were going to put in the vanilla, which is 1/4 teaspoon. Oh, well, that was a little much. Oh, well. And then we just stir it up. This is why I said I don't know why I would have to do this in a separate bowl. Oh, you know why? Because we should have sprayed it with nonstick cooking spray first. Although I don't know why. Why would we do that? Well, at any rate, it's too late now. So I got all my stuff in the bowl. I'm stirring it up. I did not spray it, and I'll tell you how that turns out. I have to chop a little bit because my pumpkin is still partly frozen. You know what? I'm intrigued by the maple syrup. I'm going to throw in a tablespoon of it anyway. So you can add that to your ingredient list. 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And I'm just going to stir that in with the rest of this stuff here. And then I'm just going to cook this. It goes on low. Let me taste it. Yeah, really can't tell. Really can't tell at all. Okay, it goes on low for about 3 hours. And we need to stir it every once in a while, but that's really all we have to do. So the pumpkin butter recipe is on its merry way. And you can just go ahead and make that up and then put it in some kind of container in your refrigerator. Or you can seal it into jars, whatever you want to do. And then when you have some pumpkin butter, you'll want to come back here and you'll want to look for the podcast about pumpkin butter chocolate chip cookies. We'll all have the pumpkin butter at that point and can proceed with this other recipe, which just looks really good. She says slightly crisp on the edges, soft and gooey in the middle. I'm sure this was intended to be timely for Halloween. I don't care. I happen to like pumpkin anytime I can get it. And I know there are those of you out there who feel the same. So we're going to make pumpkin butter chocolate chip cookies as soon as this darn pumpkin butter's ready. All right? Check out the website. Give this pumpkin butter a try. See how you like it by itself before we start putting it into other things. I suppose you could always modify the seasonings a little even after it's cooked. And that's all I'm going to do for today. But tomorrow, I will make a podcast about the chocolate chip cookies. You will find both these recipes on my website, thecookalongpodcast.com. And on all of your podcast apps, anything you use to listen to a podcast has the Cook Along podcast. I hope you will share it with your friends so they can get their pumpkin butter ready, so they can join us for the pumpkin butter chocolate chip cookie making. And until next time, happy cooking!